You're listening to the Clutter Fairy Weekly, a weekly webcast and podcast brought to you by the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas. If you'd like to participate in one of our live webcasts, please visit cfhou.com/weekly. You'll find a calendar of upcoming webcasts, as well as instructions for joining the Zoom meeting via the app or by phone. We'd love to see you. That URL again is cfhou.com/weekly. Now here's the weekly episode. Enjoy.
Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for January 14th, 2025. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we're streaming the webcast live on Facebook. I think, probably.
Finally.
So you can share your questions in the comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's weekly tittle, which was called Practice the Fundamentals. The assignment was to practice applying the basic organizing steps we revisited last week on a modest project or small area. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who practiced the basics of organizing this week. Please let us know in the comments. Julie left a comment on the show notes post for last week with both a tittle report and a question. Julie writes, I plan to reduce the scope of my project when practicing the steps. When Gayle talked about being careful not to make a big mess and then become discouraged, I realized this is exactly my problem. I tried to sort too many boxes and bins and got so overwhelmed I was frozen for 2 days. I need a plan that works with my ADD. Any advice is welcome. What works for others with ADD?
Thanks for that report, Julie. It's a good thing to notice that you bit off more than you could chew and you shut yourself down as a result. That's excellent feedback to notice, and you can adapt based on that. Start with a very small subset this time. Pull contents of one drawer, 2 feet of a closet rod, 1 bin. Don't worry if it seems too small a project. Just choose a very contained amount and do the steps to organize that amount. That way you can experience getting to completion. If when you're done, you still feel up to it, you feel like you've got some more stamina, you feel like you can stay focused, then you can go right back in and do some more. You just don't want to get past, you just don't want to do more than will make you feel overwhelmed. The idea is to start a little bit, get to the finish, and still feel like you're in control. Think of it as peeling the onion one layer at a time. It might feel like it'll take longer to finish that way, like to finish the entire project that way. But the truth is doing it all at once or in big batches is going to shut you down and stop your progress anyway. So it's better to keep moving at a slower pace with smaller amounts and then to stay in motion as well. Also remember to handle things one at a time. I often have to remind an ADHD client that they've already got 5 things in their hands, so there's no point in continuing to pick up more. They'll stand there and be looking at a box and they'll pull something out and go, oh, and then they put it in the left hand and they reach down and pick up something else and go, oh, and put it in their hand, and they do that over and over. And at some point I'm like, okay, no, you can't keep putting things in your hands. You got to stop and deal with what you've got right now. They really get drawn into the box and they pick up something only to see the next thing and pick it up too. So choosing one item and stopping to manage it, take it through the organizing steps, and then go back to the pile for a new item is the best way to prevent decision paralysis and being overwhelmed. Also, working against a timer helps some ADHD clients to focus. So if you set a timer for 20 minutes, think of a kitchen timer that clicks, a little bit when it has a physical timer. When you turn it, it clicks as the time elapses. Or if you have a time timer product, that's a specific time marker, time process that has a red sleeve on it that you pull out for the amount of time that you want. And then you see the sleeve subtract and get smaller as the time evaporates. if you have some kind of timer like that that is a little more visually triggering, and then set the timer and race against that clock to work. That, albeit artificial pressure, but still there's pressure as the time elapses, helps keep ADHD clients on task and keeps them focused. So thanks for sharing your story with us. I'm sure lots of people can relate, and I'm hopeful that some of these ideas will be helpful for you to get going. And dive back in, just dive back in a smaller pile than the one you started the first time.
Okay, Joyce reports, she says that off topic, but I finally got my condo decluttered and cleaned to the point that my brother, my sister-in-law, and my niece were finally able to come visit.
It's awesome. So the payoff was that you had visitors in the house. Yay! Everybody in the room is clapping for you. Yay, 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 yay.
Also,
That
any progress reports are on topic if we're in the tittle report part of the show, even if they aren't about the tittle.
right? Exactly. We love hearing your success stories and your progress reports about wherever you are in the process. So thanks for sharing them. And that is a big one, like getting the condo ar- arranged enough that you felt comfortable for your family to come and visit. How wonderful and what a great reward you gave yourself that you did the work and then you got a visit out of it. And that's really wonderful. And I'm sure lots of people that are listening would love to be in your shoes. So we're all cheering for you. Yay.
In response to Julie's question, Connie says for ADHD, immediate small rewards are great.
Right. So, and which is why I'm emphasizing getting into completion. So make a small pile and deal with the pile from beginning to end so that you have some sense of, I got done with that. Even if it's just a little bitty pile, it'll help you feel like you can go back and start over again. And it gives you that little, woohoo, I finished the look, I cleared that area. As long as you don't turn around and make yourself crazy by looking at all the stuff that isn't done, you got to focus on what is done and give yourself the win, and that's super important.
Apostrophe reports, this week I didn't move anything I was working on to another area thinking that would make it easier or get done. I left things where they are when I left the area, therefore I didn't spread any new/bigger messes.
Well, that's something I think that makes sense. If you feel like you trail them around and make them uh, ooze into other areas by carrying things off with you, then that's great. You've stopped yourself from relocation by accident or by distraction. And so I think that's great. You're focusing on, we talk about, stemming the tide. And if you can keep that up, then you've sort of made your messes a little bit more static and it'll be easier to deal with them when you're ready to start tackling them. Good job.
M says, my week flew, so by the time I got around to the tittle, it was about an hour ago.
That's okay.
I I quickly chose a chair that was cluttered. Simple, just put the stuff away. Done with that, I tackled the bathroom sink, thinking it would be the same. I was amazed at the stuff I could toss. I think having a deadline really helped me make decisions. 2 areas done.
Well, and see, that's that artificial timer pressure that I was talking about earlier. You had a time which was the show's coming up and you wanted to be done before the show turned on. And so you gave yourself an artificial countdown clock by having that in mind. And it helped you focus and get something done. So great. You had the first experience of what it's like to work against the clock and get yourself focused and going somewhere. Good job. Thanks for sharing that.
Connie offers a tip. I like to use an apron with huge pockets when tidying up, but also I use a tray for each room, taking things from one room to the other.
Okay. So you're putting the things in from the room that you're in, you're putting the things that don't belong there onto the tray and then taking the tray out with them into the next room. That's great.
That's what it
As
sounds
long
like.
as you then go and walk into the next room and offload, and that's wonderful. You don't want to just load up trays and move them around the house. You want to actually, let them go and be redelivered. And if you think of that as a maintenance chore, where what you do is you take things that are in the wrong room and go put them in the right room and put them away, then doing as you go around all of the rooms and move things back around, that is definitely maintaining your house and putting things away ultimately. And so that's a great system. Good for
Leela,
you.
report, Leela reports, I decluttered dishes this morning. I had plates and bowls for using in the toaster oven daily, then an everyday set of dishes, then a set of china that was passed down. I thought, who needs three sets of dishes? I reduced the china to a set of four, which is all in the decorative curio now, and reduced the everyday set to serve six. I may pare down more later.
That's great. And you made a very good point about the choice doesn't always have to be, do I keep the china or not? It can be, I'm going to keep a smaller subset of the china, which in your case was I'm keeping four place settings, and you were letting all the rest go. And so you were able to reduce the volume and move it out of the kitchen so it's not in the way. And so you fixed it from two different directions. A, you relocated it to someplace else. And B, you shrunk its footprint. You made it a smaller collection. And so people, I think, once the collection of china has been made, they feel loath to break the collection up. But if you have a 200-piece collection and you're never going to use it, then storing 200 pieces is just really taking up a lot of space for no good reason. So shrinking that population is great. And that you did it with your everyday dishes too is wonderful. So hey, you're right sizing those collections for your space. And you're not keeping three sets in the kitchen. You're putting the decorative one, the china, the fancy one you don't use very often, somewhere else until you need it once a year or twice a year. So good adaptations there. Good job adapting to your kitchen space.
Okay, one more tittle report. This one's from
Mm.
Anita. She says, I labeled every single electric plug and wire under my bed, about 16, and
Oh,
vacuumed and went through my travel box and discarded excess small travel size cosmetics and a voltage converter, which was last used about 40 years ago on a trip to Italy. And I had two of them.
of course you did. But you don't have to have them anymore. So good job that you got rid of them. And I love that you got rid of the, old travel things. That's wonderful. I am in awe of the 16 charger things that need to be labeled under your bed. I can't imagine what's going on under there that needs all those cords, but okay. I'm good that you labeled them. If there's that many, you ought to be able to label them and find what you want when you want it. So that sounds like a good organizing project for you, and congratulations.
Okay, I
You lied.
misspoke. I misspoke. There's one more that's too good not to share. And this reminds me of we talked years and years ago about replacing your New Year's resolutions with new month resolutions,
Mm-hmm.
small things of smaller scope. And Amanda says, I'm trying something new. I've assigned myself reasonably sized tasks for each month in 2025, like sort and deal with the inherited Hallmark ornaments one month, inherited dolls the next, etc. If I finish before the end of the month, I can either take a break or move forward. I'm hopeful that this will keep me on task through completion, rather than bouncing from box to box in my basement, never finishing anything.
I think that's an excellent idea. You've given yourself a focus and a time frame to complete it. You've given yourself the possibility of having breaks in between, which is great. And you've outlined all of the projects that you want to cover and stretch them out over the year. So great planning on your part, and great, you did a great job of focusing it for yourself so that, like, okay, in January, I know I have 17 things to do, but in January, I'm focusing on this one thing and we're going to work to get this to completion. And that is excellent. And so you're giving yourself permission to ignore the rest and work on the one that needs your attention. And if you're selling it, if you're relocating it, if you have to give it to specific people, if you got to ship things or get help taking things out, it all is steps that require you to pay attention and schedule help and do the things you have to do. So if you declare one month is we're working on the ornaments, I guess you said we're working on the ornaments,
Right.
then
And then the
that is,
dolls.
and then the
Yeah.
dolls. And so you're going to go about the business of, okay, I have these ornaments and what am I going to do with them? Am I going to sell them? Am I going to donate them? Am I going to find a place that needs the ornaments? And all of the work that you do around ornaments is going to be a different type of work than maybe you do around the dolls. And so you're focusing your efforts and you're going to get there. And that's awesome. I think you're going to be very successful. So go with your plan and come and report with us about how it goes.
And even if you The beauty of that too is even if you have some stumbles, you have some rough months where life intrudes and you don't finish the project you set out to do, you'll still finish the year with 9 or 10, successful projects completed instead of the vague and scary, huge, overwhelming goal of get rid of all the clutter in the basement, or something
Yeah, that
something
larger
less well
project.
defined. Yeah, the larger, less well defined project. So that's terrific.
Yeah, that's
I
excellent.
think you're setting yourself up for success there, Amanda. All right, let's get to our main topic because we have lots prepared, and we'll come back for some more tittle reports if time allows us. In most homes, the kitchen is a hive of activity, but all that traffic can lead to confusion and disagreement about how it should be used and what belongs in this mission-critical space. Today, we're going to slice and dice the problem of kitchen clutter and suggest recipes, again, metaphorically, for streamlining the heart of your family's life. Although if time permits, I will talk about one fabulous recipe I tried this week. Somebody remind me
Okay.
later.
Okay. All right, so let's start by talking about the results of our survey. A whole bunch of you chimed in this week. We're really excited about that. We got some great answers, some great questions, and if you guys like reading those on the back end, it's worth it. This one is a really full survey. Lots of good detail. We started off by asking our audience, how often are you troubled by clutter in the kitchen or the pantry? We offered several answers, and here's how you answered. 39% of you said it's an occasional problem. 30% of you says my kitchen usually has some clutter. 11% of you said infrequently or never. And congratulations. We encourage you to chime in today with your advice to help the rest of our audience get control over the kitchen and pantry the way you have. 10% say my kitchen is often out of control, and 10% say my kitchen is a clutter nightmare. So the key takeaway for that is more than half of you, more than 50% answered usually, often, or nightmare, with another 39% experiencing an occasional problem. So clearly the vast majority of our audience has issues with kitchen on some level. Next, we asked our viewers and listeners, what sources of clutter or specific issues do you experience in the kitchen or pantry? And here are some of the responses that we heard frequently.
Ellen said, I need to work out a better system for my pantry cabinet so that it is easier to see what I have. That's a biggie, and we suffer from that too. Ellen goes on to say, I found that my new cabinets and drawers are not as tall as the display models, and I'm keeping my stock pot and blender in my coat closet.
It's not unusual for those large items that are like that to not work with cabinets. They're taller, they're deeper, and even if they fit in a kitchen cabinet, they're going to take up a huge amount of the cabinet. They basically make it useless for anything else other than the big stock pot you finally cram in there. So moving those to the coat closet is a great alternative storage for them. And you can even put them in a bin on the floor or on a shelf to keep them cleaner. So part of what she talked about in there was this larger pieces that got moved out to somewhere else. And then the other part was the cabinets are not as tall, or the display models were not exactly the size that you thought. And if you're having trouble seeing, I will say what everyone wants their pantry to hold more than it does. And one of the adaptations that you have to make is stocking a level of food that is easily managed in the pantry instead of stocking a level of food that makes you feel more comfortable. I guess is the best way to say it. Some people
Right.
really like to have a very deep stock, but if you don't have the pantry to hold it, you are making your ability to function in the pantry much, much harder than it needs to be. So one of the adaptations you have to do is recognize the limit, the capacity, the actual capacity of your pantry, and not stock more than it can comfortably hold. And figuring out what that level is where you feel like you've got the choices that you need to make the meals that you want to make, but it's not too hard to get in and out of the pantry. It's not too hard to put new things in or find what you want in there. It isn't cans and boxes of food take up space. And it isn't that you don't have it organized enough. I mean, there's some level of it can be improved by organization, of course, but usually the biggest problem is that you have way more contents than will actually fit in the physical box that is the pantry. And you keep trying to shove it in there Tetris style to make more fit, but then you can't see what you have. And then you're annoyed that you bought another 14 cans of green beans because you didn't see the tin you had in there already. So it definitely affects your ability to function in the pantry if you don't right size the collection of pantry items for the box that is the pantry. There you go. The end.
Several people in survey responses mentioned having allocated some space in the garage as overflow for the big roaster that only comes out once or twice a year, and the large appliances that are seldom used. So if you've got a garage that doesn't, that has conditions of temperature and pressure that things don't immediately deteriorate in there, that can be a good solution.
Right, right. And having a designated shelf that is close to the door that goes into the house that can be off the ground so that it's not getting, dirt from the floor and the people passing by it is not, stirring up dust and dirt to go on top of your items, and that it's easy for you to lift them up and down. Like you don't want them way over your head out in the garage any more than you want them way over your head in the kitchen. They need to be easy for you to grab, but having a designated shelf and maybe covering them up out there so that they stay more dust free. You can make do with that out there, absolutely, for that big stuff.
An anonymous respondent said that the specific issues are extra snacks, bread, etc. in a corner, mail on the counter, purse, keys on a portion of the counter, notes, things to do, papers, etc.
Paper on the counter. Every kitchen has this paper spot, and it never makes sense in any of them. It's just because we usually walk through the kitchen first when we come home. Papers need a system outside of the kitchen, and making that a priority fix will help declutter immensely. And the other thing that I saw in there, the extra snacks and bread in the corner, we all have a few things on the counter because they're frequent access. Uh, Many hands go into it. I actually have a serving tray that's designed for putting a plate and a food on and taking it walking off with it, but it's a bamboo tray and it's typical tray length, and I have that sitting on the end of the counter and on that tray is the can of nuts and the half open thing of potato chips and the little small pieces of food that's in process, like the bread was what made me think of it. The loaf of bread that I don't have in the fridge, I have it out, but it's sitting on that tray, and so I use that tray as a container to contain these foods that are going in and out all the time and being used up and run through. So I don't store things that sit there for a long time. Here's the current thing of grape tomatoes that I'm eating out of. That kind of stuff sits on that tray and it's contained in one spot. It's a parking space in my kitchen for the food that is in process and being used. When it's a brand new bag, I don't put it on the tray. The potato chips that I just brought home from the grocery store go in the pantry. When
Right.
I open it and eat some of it and fold it up and clip it, then it ends up on that tray so that it is, the potato chips in process. So it's a way to create a parking space on the counter, have some kind of a tray, a plate, some kind of decorative bin, whatever makes you happy that you can put things in. If you know you're going to put those food and snacks out anyway, give it a plate, give it a house, and leave that house. Let that house be part of the permanent setup on the kitchen.
That's important too. It's important to designate space for things that are in progress, especially if you share your space,
Mm.
because you don't want to end up with,
Five empty potato chip bags.
with three open jars of peanut butter and so on, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. You have two boxes of the same kind of cereal open at the same time,
I know, right?
both
Oh.
going stale.
All right. Both not getting eaten fast enough.
Okay, Becky says, I absolutely hate the middle bar in the kitchen. Every new house seems to think that they need a bar with a sink as the partition between the living room and the kitchen. So the kitchen is one of the first rooms that is seen. Wouldn't you know, that bar is where everyone places items that need to be put up, and it all tends to pile up.
Arg. A flat surface that's not being used very often. That's an invitation to clutter. So, figuring out what types of things are landing there and devising systems to handle those things will help you stop using that flat surface as a parking space. Sometimes you have to designate it as lava. You have to say, this surface, this bar counter is lava, and whatever you put on here is going to get burnt, i.e., I'm throwing it in the trash. So if you threaten your family with lava as a surface,
Hmm.
if it lands here, all you have surrendered your right to ownership, and I can do with it what I wish. You can then retrain the rest of your household to not put things there. And truthfully, you do need to spend some time, like you can't just throw them to the wind, right? You have to spend some time realizing what kinds of things are coming in and landing there. There's going to be categories of stuff that are coming in the house. I emptied my car, I brought the mail in. This is the shopping that I just brought in. Fill in the blank. So figure out what those categories are and what it's going to take to get them from I brought them into the house to now they are where they're supposed to go. And so thinking your way through analyzing what's up there and why it's there. Somebody brought in the mail and they didn't want to deal with it. Somebody went shopping and their hands were full and they ran to the bathroom like I do every time I come home. And so, you can't deal with it in the moment because you got to go to the toilet. But then you have to circle back and pick up stuff. And so there's processes devised based on what kinds of things are landing there and why. And if you analyze what's there and who's bringing it and why they're dumping it there, you can create some systems in place for those kinds of things and hopefully retrain everybody to use the systems instead of the lava that is your bar.
Headed off, headed off at the pass.
Right, right.
Um,
I see somebody saying, how? I've tried everything.
yeah,
What
yeah.
does it say?
Catastrophe says I've tried everything to train my family. Um, I've even labeled shelves and switches, etc., with what goes there and SOPs per room. Even pictures how it should look. They just throw crap everywhere.
Well, right. So, yeah. So, again, figuring out what they're bringing in and why they're tossing it there, like what's the category and what's supposed to happen with it, having that conversation with them about, okay, this is what you're bringing in, this is why it's here, this is where I would rather it go instead, and not put all your stuff. It's not a conversation to say put all your stuff away. It's to say when you bring in the mail, this is where I want the mail to go, and remind them over and over and over and over again until they make a left turn instead of a right turn and throw it in on the lava. And so it requires a specific plan and instruction for each type of thing that they bring in. And and I can't change your husband. So, my
Well,
family's
she
untrainable.
right.
Somebody said my family's
Uh,
untrainable.
well,
Okay. Not
you know,
100%.
my mother used humor and sarcasm and including physical humor. Like, if she saw you put something down where she'd specifically covered this before, she would go over and she'd pick it up and she'd say, something like, let me tell you about this amazing new innovation we have, which is this basket where the mail goes. It's revolutionary. It's going to change. It's changed my life, and it's going to change yours. And things like that. I mean, she really,
Yeah.
and repetition because well, husbands and children are stupid,
Right.
right?
And they also have learned if you if you act like you can't do it and you act dumb, then people don't expect anything from you
Right.
anymore. And
Well,
so,
and seriously, I'm joking about how she handled it, but I do think that physically, like when someone puts something down in the forbidden zone and you physically go pick it up and hand it back to them and
mm,
instruct them, the physical memory of Oh,
Oh,
yes. Yes,
I'm supposed to go
yes.
over here,
It's
right?
supposed to be yeah, yeah. My backpack goes in the little cubby hole that you've told me 42 times my backpack should go in.
Right. And what's good about it is she didn't yell because
Right.
yelling is
Yeah.
hardly ever works. She made it funny and she tried to be, sarcastic and silly. So
Yeah.
she wasn't like super shaming about it and she wasn't, screaming at the top of her lungs at them. She, came at you guys with a little humor and a little sarcasm and a little like, yeah, yeah, I see you and we're going to do it this way still. Like
Yes.
I'm not surrendering
Yes.
my plan. I like
And
it.
her secret weapon was nicknames in terms of endearment too. So
Oh, I
it's
love it.
yeah. Um, okay, we need to move on or we're
Yeah,
never
yeah.
going to get through all this content. So let's move on to
Okay.
the next survey question, which was
Okay.
um, what organizing solutions or strategies have you tried or used in the kitchen and how have they worked or failed to work for you? So we're going to share a few responses. Anita says, I have a plastic set of drawers in the cupboard space to put veg and pasta as I lost a big area of pantry space when they put our new boiler in. Our kitchen is a very small galley-shaped area.
And the fact that it's a very small galley shaped area and a very small pantry is a support for my earlier comment about you have to dial the contents to the space that you have. So you can't have a huge backstock of food and snacks uh, to work with because you don't really have the kitchen that supports that. So, you have to go shopping more often and you can't buy very much at one time. So, changing your shopping habits and changing your storage habits around the pantry is super important. Your biggest support will be organizing what you've got so that it's usable and easy to see, and then right sizing the contents for the space you actually have. And I'm sure you're happy to have the new boiler because that means you're staying warm. So,
Ginger offered a whole bunch of she described a whole bunch of her own solutions in her survey
mm,
response. So I really encourage people to take a look at the suggestions. You can find the results of today's survey at cfhou.com/results241. That's the episode number. The specific one I want to share, Ginger says, Under sink has stayed neatly organized since 2014. It stays tidy and it's easy to clean. I have two baskets. There is nothing stored behind the baskets. The left side holds frequently used products like daily items. The right
mm.
side holds less frequently used items like weekly things. My tool case slides in on the right side.
That is a great solution. And it is a reflection of the fact that the kitchen sink, under the kitchen sink has all that plumbing action going on. And although we want that box to hold a lot, it really can't hold a lot. It's just, there's too much going on underneath there. And so the idea that you have two baskets and you have some tools slide in the side and you're done, like that's great. You're not overstuffing this space. You're not losing things at the back behind the baskets. And you have I use these every day. I use these every week. Um, Two basket choices, and that's all that's down there. And that is great. You've made it functional. I love that you remember when you did it. I love that you can say it's been since 2014. That's really awesome that you have that in your head.
Ginger's a serious record keeper too, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Um, Kathy says, I have a bookcase with a special covered basket for holding papers right behind my place at the table, yet I still leave the papers I'm consulting all week on the table instead of in the basket. Other papers tend to accumulate on the basket, so I keep certain papers on the table that I want to easily find and consult daily. I would also like to keep the counters relatively clear, but can't seem to find a home for things that I use regularly that is just as convenient as keeping them out.
So I hear the explanation about keeping it's easier to see them if I keep everything out. And the only issue that comes up around that is when you start deciding that you need to keep it out in order to see it and remember it and do something about it, eventually you get more than 3 or 5 or 7 things out. And then it's just a pile of stuff all over everywhere. You lose the capacity to keep very much out before it becomes inconvenient because of the chaos that it creates. So there's a very limited window of I have these few things out and I am consulting them daily and I use them all the time and I want to be able to see them. And that's that capacity is pretty small. So you can have, 4 or 5 things out, 6 or 7 things out. And then it starts to be, in order to have them out, you have to have them on top of each other, or something else comes and sits on top of the paper because you brought something in and set it down, and you lose the ability to have all things spread out as if the house was a one big chalkboard that you were putting things on. And so it's a system that has a flaw in capacity. It's never going to be big enough to spread everything out that you want to remember. And if you were to spread everything out, then you would have just created a horizontal paper chaos that you couldn't find anything anyway. So you have to have a filter there, which is these are the things that I absolutely have to have out. And then everything else, I need to find another solution. And as you were talking about the papers that you want to be able to consult every day, it made me think, maybe you just want to have a binder there with
That's what I
sleeve
was.
protectors and put those papers in there, and you open the binder and flip the pages until you find the one that you want, as opposed to just having them spread out laterally on the
Yeah.
surface.
It sounded to me as if part of Kathy's problem is that the basket has a poorly defined function.
Mm,
It may be part collection space, part medium-term storage. Maybe things
yeah,
are in
like,
here for a while till the bill gets paid, or till I've decided whether I keep this receipt. And
yeah.
then part reference material. If the things that need to be, I also went straight to binder when she referred to certain papers on the table that I want to easily find and consult daily. Yeah, that
Mm.
sounds like that should go in a binder or a planner
That stays on the table
right,
so that you can grab it and open it immediately when you want something.
or next to the basket on the
Hmm.
space
On the
away
shelf
from the
behind.
table. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, either one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think clarify the purposes that that basket is serving, and maybe split it into several different solutions.
Yeah, because holding papers, it depends on what kinds of paper. Like there
Right.
might be bills that need to be paid. There might be paper that you've already dealt with that needs to be filed. There might be things that are they're to-do items, and you have yet to take action on them. And so they're there because you need to circle back and take an action. And so that's really 3 different subsets of paper and the action around that paper. And so maybe one basket is insufficient. And that one basket could be, this is the basket of stuff that I need to go and file because I'm done with it. And the rest of the stuff needs to be in a different system.
Yeah. Christina says she might want to try a vertical file.
Mm,
It's yeah, or an inbox tray with several levels where each one represents a different category of that paper.
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm.
otherwise, if it's sort of a catch-all, then you spend a lot of time having to refresh your memory about what's in there and
Yeah.
digging for the thing that you need to take action on among things that don't require, and leafing past things that don't require any action on your part.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so there's paper is always more than one task. There's always several tasks buried into the paper, and isolating those tasks and making systems around them is different systems around them is important.
Okay, Susan says, I keep putting things in cabinets, but still seems to be too much left out. I keep donating stuff to make more room.
Go team go. That is your solution. If, putting things away still leaves a bunch of stuff out, then you haven't shrunk to your capacity of your kitchen yet. So getting more clear about what kinds of things need to stay and what's really helping you in the kitchen and what isn't helping you is where you need to focus.
Okay,
Don't give up space to stuff that you don't use all the time.
one more here. Granny says, my pantry is very well organized and it's easy for me to see what I have and what I need to buy. My kitchen is fairly well organized, and it's easy to get items into the pantry and out of sight when we have friends or family over for large events,
That's
and
good.
we need the island to serve food. I think the problem with me is that I'm an out of sight, out of mind kind of person for certain items. If I think about them, I know exactly where they are, but if I don't see them, they don't readily come to mind. Food items that may go bad, for example.
That's totally okay. You don't have to remember 100% what's in the pantry all the time. You just need a habit of looking through it regularly to see what's there. Maybe when you're creating a shopping list or planning a meal, refreshing your memory by standing there and shopping through what you have will keep you up to date and remind you of what's lingering there needing to be used. It's really just a function of we normally go in the pantry, grab one thing that we want and leave. But if you make a maintenance chore of standing at the pantry and perusing and seeing what you have, looking behind, pulling things out, and reminding yourself, oh yeah, I have that. Oh yeah, I have that. And letting it spark some of your meal planning instead of the other way around, it will help you um, get in there and churn the contents a little bit more and and allow you to not think that you have to keep the contents of the pantry in your head all the time. You don't. You can just go in there and look.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay. So kitchens are being used all the time. They're one of the most active places in the house. It's really the heart of the house. And it's the traditional family meeting space, and it's the most popular room at every party. Everyone who lives in your house goes in and out of there all day long, always with the goal of grabbing something from the pantry or the fridge. The kitchen activity doesn't really stop until everyone's in bed. And sometimes there's midnight visitors too. We all want meals, snacks, and drinks several times a day. Sometimes the kitchen operates for major cooking projects too, like a birthday or holiday meals. Truly, it operates like a restaurant. It opens when people get up, runs all day long until closing time, and your kitchen is the same as that. Too often, it's so packed full of must have gadgets, stained Tupperware, and antique ingredients that there's no space left for cooking. It needs constant and continuous reset to stay operational. Everyone needs to know where everything is. The dishes need to be easy to grab, and the kids need to know where the snacks are in the afternoon after school. With all those hands in there all day long, it's really important that the kitchen be organized and easy to use. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to throw out some ideas for planning an organized kitchen. And the first one that I'm going to say is make things easy for helpers to find. Put tools right where you use them, spoons where you stir, dishes near the dishwasher. When there's logic behind your storage, it's easier for somebody to help you because they can find what they need without going on a treasure hunt. So don't put your wedding china on the lowest shelf of the kitchen cabinet by the sink. I actually had a client do that. They came in, they took their wedding china and they put it on the lowest, most easily accessible kitchen cabinet right next to the sink and completely filled it up. And so then everybody would go there naturally to like empty the dishwasher or something and it'd be like, oh, can't go there. And then they would have to go wander around, look for it. And it was ridiculous because ain't nobody using the kitchen china. Nobody was taking that out to cook with. And it was completely in a place
It
that made
was
absolutely no sense.
and prime real estate, filling up
Prime real
prime real
estate.
estate. Yeah.
Absolutely. It was the first thing I moved when I was in the kitchen. It was, oh, this has got to go. And it's going way over here up there in the cabinet. So the second thing is think outside the cabinet. Like we talked about earlier, those bulky pots and pans can eat up a lot of cabinet space. So consider storing them above your workspace or stove or on an overhead rack. Not only will it give you instant access to the saucepan you need if you have it hanging over that overhead rack, it really looks professional up there. As an alternative, you can store excess large appliances on a garage or utility room shelf or in that huge, barely accessible cabinet above the fridge where you have to like stand on the ladder and open the things. That's a great place to put things because that's usually a tall cabinet. It's also very deep and it allows you to put those big things that you don't get into very often. Just don't put the mix master up there. That thing that weighs 50 pounds, we don't want anybody dying. But otherwise, you can put things up there and get them out of the way if they're extra large. And you don't use them very often. Clear the decks. Only appliances and items that you use daily should be on the counters. If you use it once in a while, find another place besides the counter to store it. So put those cake decorating tools away until it's somebody's birthday. You need the counter as a workspace And the smaller the kitchen, the more valuable that work surface is. So we don't want it buried in things that you don't use every day. Play favorites, which means group items by how frequently that you use them. So put your favorite cookware and dishes and glassware in the front of the cabinets for easy access, and separate them by use. So take your baking gear and put all the stuff that you use to bake in one section and all the cooking gear together in a different section. Consider the refrigerator an organizing zone too. So you want to sort like with like there and keep the things that you use most in the front. Don't overstuff the fridge, and purge the contents regularly so the fridge isn't too crowded. You can do this a few shelves at a time if you don't have the time to do it all in one go. And trying to revamp the whole refrigerator and clean it, that's like, that's going to take a couple hours. But you can do one shelf at a time on any given day and be constantly going through the shelves over time and keep your refrigerator fluffed. You can introduce containers into the fridge, lazy Susans in the fridge. They help corral all those bottles and jars, and they give you easy access to ingredients. So don't forget that there are containers that are specifically designed to use in the fridge and the freezer. You can just Google for that, and they make long, narrow things that are easy to slide onto refrigerator shelves. So don't forget to use them. You want to clear the drop zone. We talked about this earlier too. The kitchen is for all things related to food storage and preparation. So don't let the stuff from the other rooms creep in and land on the counter. You want to turn back non-kitchen stuff at the door. So enlist your family to clear out anything that doesn't belong in that room. There's enough to keep clean in there already. If everyone passes through the kitchen on the way in, they're probably using the counter or island as their drop zone. And we talked about that earlier. So try to create some other space for people to empty their hands, and ask your family to walk through without dropping their junk in the kitchen. Sometimes people pass through from the garage through a utility room on the way to the kitchen. Sometimes you come in and you go straight through the kitchen from the garage. Just depends on how your house is designed. And so you may or may not be walking in from outside into your kitchen. And if you are, the temptation to have everything land there is going to be really high. So you're going to want to try to recognize that that's a problem and keep on trucking. Walk right on through the kitchen to wherever you've got your alternative drop zones. Fluff the pantry with regularity. We just talked about that. Don't just add in there forever and hope someday you'll use it all. That day will never come. So take out what nobody liked. Take out the experiment you tried and hated. Take out what's old, what was on sale. So you bought 50 cans of something because they were on sale. Yes, everybody eats green beans, but do you really want to store 50 cans of green beans and then nothing else will fit in your pantry? No, that's a backstock that is not appropriate for a size of a kitchen. You want to remove leftover supplies too, like things that are left over from parties that you had and picnics and food deliveries. You do not need the biggest collection of plasticware on your block. So find a way to trash it or collect it and pass it on to somewhere that can use it. You need to decide on a leftover storage set. I cannot emphasize this enough. And ditch all the multiples of containers. When have you ever needed that many containers to hold leftovers? Never, never. Pick a basic set with a few sizes and pass the rest on. We give up way too much kitchen space to things that might hold leftovers someday. You need that space for more important things. And lastly, I'm going to say check your collections. Notice the things that you handle, in air quotes, I'm making air quotes here, you handle them by stuffing them into the kitchen somewhere. I'm talking about plastic kitchen bags from shopping, packets of plasticware from takeouts, those stray single serving mustard and mayo packets, glass jars and other containers that are saved after the contents got used because they're still useful. We always collect much faster than we can use up the stuff we save. And then we try to bank all that into the kitchen and basically freeze the kitchen from functionality. So you want to notice where you create collections that you add to but cannot possibly subtract from fast enough. I know that the peanut butter jar that you just finished is still a usable jar. I get it. But you already have a million containers to hold things for leftovers, and you don't need to add the 37th peanut butter jar to your collection. So just notice the things that you collect because it's easy to go, oh, I'm adding that to the plastic bag collection instead of thinking about, gee, is my plastic bag collection exploding out into the room every time I open that
Right.
drawer?
Are the
And for
400 I already have enough?
sufficient,
I wonder.
right? And
I
so
I
notice
would
that and deal.
also add, don't be afraid to break up the set. If you've bought your storage containers in those boxed sets at
Yeah, yeah.
Costco or
30
Sam's or
pack a
wherever,
package of 30.
and it's always got, like one huge one and then a couple pretty big ones and a bunch of medium and a bunch some teeny tinies.
Yeah,
And they're always more teeny tinies than you need because the teeny tinies are not good for very much. And so
right.
usually, you'll only ever have two of those in use at a time.
Right.
Get rid of the rest. Donate them somewhere. Give them away to a friend or neighbor who, has this problem, but and might maybe would actually use them.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the people that manufacture the stuff, they make it so that, it's a set and it seems super useful and you are going to plop your money down to buy it. And then you bring it home and you try to store it and you realize, oh, I already have 40 million plastic containers and I have a bunch of recycled ones from other food that I've used up. And at some point, the containers to hold food takes over the kitchen. And so this is a universal problem. And I spend a huge amount of time going, okay, we're matching up all these sets. You have this and this and this and this to use for leftovers. Who is making all that food that you're going to store in the kitchen? Nobody. So let's pick your favorites and let's let the rest get out. And it is amazing how much space you unearth just by noticing the collections and paring them down. We're almost out of time.
We are, but we started a little late because I was struggling with
That's
Facebook, so
true.
we'll go a couple minutes over. So let's to wrap up, let's go back to our survey one more time.
Okay.
Our just for fun question this week was, what one trick pony resides in your kitchen or pantry, and why do you keep it? We got more answers about what people have than why they keep it. We used one trick pony in this question to refer to any tool, gadget, appliance, or item of cookware that serves only one function and
Mm,
seldom gets used. I gave the example of a shrimp deveiner, which, unless you cook a lot of fresh shrimp, might not deserve space in your kitchen gadget drawer.
right.
And
Fun as a collector, but
here are some of our favorite answers. Karen says, the air fryer. I keep it because everyone I know loves theirs, and I think I will too once I decide to use it.
air fryers have a huge footprint. Those things are tall and big, and they're difficult to open unless you have a really, open piece of cabinet to put them on. And it's like there's a lot going on with an air fryer. So they really need to justify their use of the counter space. And if you're keeping it, then you need to make a goal to try to use it because it is really taking up a lot of your space and it is going to be a problem if you're not actively using it. If you love making stuff in the air fryer, great, it's earned its space. But an air fryer that's sitting over there doing nothing, it needs to be used or gone. That's my comment.
Okay, I'm going to just rattle quickly through a few more that I enjoyed. Catherine says she has a hand tool that scrapes butter into balls. It sounded fun to begin with, and I never use it. I just scoop butter on a plate with a spoon or knife.
Of course.
Lynn says, very few single-use items left in my kitchen. I move many of the seldom-used appliances to my garage. Things such as canners, mixers, food savers, dehydrator, pressure cookers are all out there. They get used seasonally and don't need to take up real estate in my kitchen the rest of the year.
Absolutely. And all those things you described are big
Yeah.
footprint items. So good job.
Allison says, I guess a gravy bowl. I prefer multi-use items and pretty ruthlessly decluttered several years ago. Goodbye garlic press, ricer, melon baller, and waffle maker.
Good job.
Millie says lemon squeezer. It's used very occasionally. I keep it because it's one of the very few items my husband purchased for the kitchen.
So a lemon squeezer isn't a huge footprint and it's sentimental. You can have a sentimental item in your kitchen.
People also mentioned dessert spoons, crystal, china, a meat slicer, a meat grinder, a cookie press,
Oh,
a boiled egg slicer, and more.
everybody had a boiled egg slicer back in the day. Like suddenly it was necessary to slam it down and have a slicer.
And this is my very favorite. Denise says, I used to have this egg cracker from Amazon. Egg topper, and then she quotes from the ad, egg topper opener cracker tool. Easily cut and remove the top of soft-boiled eggs. It is a gadget that is supposed to crack soft-boiled eggs. It didn't work very well, so I kept it for 5 years. I decluttered it in 2021.
Yay, Denise.
I just loved it didn't work very well, so I kept
So I
it for
kept it for
5 years.
5 years.
Only 5 years though, so you know.
And and that's a perfect thing. It's like she spent money on it, and so it's hard to let it go when it's like, oh, that was a mistake. That was a bad purchase. I shouldn't have bought it. I shouldn't have spent the
Oops.
money. Oops. Right? I totally get it. Those answers
Okay,
are great.
we are about out of time, so let's talk about next week. We'll be
Okay.
back Tuesday, January 21st at the usual time. Several people have asked questions or suggested topics that share the common theme of mindset, how to revise a negative or unproductive mindset, or
Mm,
cultivate a positive, productive one. So next week, we're going to offer some suggestions for adjusting your mindset. I don't have a title for that yet, but watch your email this week for the announcement.
right.
Gayle, why don't you give us the title?
This week's title is called Reclaim the Kitchen. This week's assignment is to address kitchen clutter using one of the approaches that we've talked about today. So, one, you can cultivate a new kitchen habit. Use the tiny habits method we've talked about before. If you're a regular audience member, you know we've talked about tiny habits. So, pair a new habit that you wish to create with an existing successful habit. For example, every morning I go in and start brewing coffee. And so while you're brewing coffee, you can unload and put away one rack of clean dishes from the dishwasher, for instance. So you know you're going to do coffee brewing, and that's the habit you do without thinking. And so attach the new habit of unloading part of the dishwasher while you are waiting for the coffee to brew. That's an example. The next suggestion is a place for everything, just not in the kitchen. Identify an item that keeps finding its way to the kitchen but doesn't need to be there. Let it go if you can, or assign it a new storage location elsewhere in the house if you still want to keep it. Keep only what you use and need. So scan the kitchen counters, the cabinets, and the drawers for a tool, an appliance, or an item of cookware that you haven't used for a long time, and consider whether you have something else that could serve the same function, and can you let the unneeded item go. So go in, tackle the contents of your kitchen, and see if you can't reduce it down and make it more functional for you. And then come back and tell us about it next week.
I did say that if we had time, I would mention the recipe that I tried this week.
Yes, yes, yes.
So it's for I can't remember what they call it, but it's this salt. I'm going to call it saltine toffee candy. Some people call it Christmas crack. I can't believe I have never been served this before, but it's got about 5 ingredients: saltines, brown sugar, butter, chocolate in the form of I used Ghirardelli chocolate chips because they're like really good chocolate.
Right,
And then
right.
I topped it with a little bit of Heath bar bits and
Ooh,
and just a tiny pinch of salt to set off the caramel.
right.
And I'm going to put a link to the recipe in the show notes.
Very, very bad
It's
Ed.
it's the thing about it too is it's the perfect terrible bad for you indulgent snack if
Right.
you're a caramel or toffee lover, which I am.
Right.
And it takes 15 minutes to make start to finish. I
And you're
mean,
done.
it's incredibly easy. So,
Hence the crack
yes.
designation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Sorry I missed that. Well, you guys, you can go make some Christmas crack from Ed.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
And since we have so many new people RSVP for us this week, I'm also going to throw up the sign for the YouTube channel. cfhou.com/YouTube takes you straight to our channel and all of our content. And we have about 300 videos out there right now. So if you're desperate for more discussion of decluttering, you're welcome to go and shop our channel. Listen to us talk about whatever angle of organizing you are interested in. And we look forward to hearing from you again. I hope that you enjoyed today and that you'll join us again next week. We'll be back talking about more things decluttering. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.